Hello, and my name is Pete Rushmer, and I'm your host today of A Half Dozen Things podcast. A Half Dozen Things is a podcast for business owners just like you. Whether you're an underdog hungry for success, or you're already smashing it but want to continue to level up, we are here each week for you to get insight and learning from the very best in the business. No fluff, no BS, and no self-proclaimed gurus talking about how easy business or life is. So the red light's rolling, and I'm joined today by the amazing Sarah Stones, and she runs a business called Plain Sailing Motivation. You'll be able to see by her title there, she's a coach, she's a motivation specialist, and she's a speaker as well. And she's just an all-round incredible human being. And I'm absolutely privileged to have met Sarah as part of my NLP Master Practitioner training, which we worked together on actually, and we were actually breakthrough partners on. And she joins me today on the podcast because we're going to be talking about a range of cool stuff around positive things and positive psychology. And we're actually going to really do the NLP thing, and we're actually going to title the podcast after the session, but we're definitely going to be focusing on positivity. So if you want to hear some more of that, then please do listen on. Sarah, thank you for joining me. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. Are you able to just introduce yourself a little bit for our listeners, please?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It's just so lovely to talk to you, Pete. So I am Sarah. I run Plain Sailing Motivation, which I think the clue is in the title. So before running Plain Sailing, I was in HR. Please don't hold that against me. And I also sat on employment tribunals. So I had real insight into what happens when things go wrong in businesses. And it takes up an awful lot of time. And actually, if we are focused on what is good and supporting staff, recruiting the right staff into the right roles, and supporting people to find the right jobs, then hopefully everything can and should go a lot smoother. So I love focusing on uncovering the shiny side that everybody is born with. And sometimes it gets covered up through layers of trickery as we go through life. And it's about helping people to rediscover their shine.
Oh, do you know what? I love that. Did you know my nickname's Shiny Pete?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, certainly with a couple of my customers. I think it's more to do with the shine on my head than it is to do with my shine of personality. But there we go.
It's not that bright yellow tracksuit that you've got then.
Do you want to know a secret? I look all corporate up here, but actually... For those of you that are listening on the podcast and can't see the YouTube video, I've just shown Sarah my yellow shorts. I've even got look at that.
It's superb.
I like a bit of bright colours, and I've got a yellow watch on as well.
My cat is also called Sunshine. So
really?
That even on a dull day, I get to see sunshine.
That's amazing.
A bit corny, isn't it?
A little bit, Sarah, a little bit, but I like it. I think I'm going to forgive you for that because I quite like it.
Thank you.
Sarah, tell me then about, we're going to talk about positive stuff, right? So tell me about, when we first, just before we came on the call, we were talking about appreciative inquiry. Tell me a bit about what that means.
So appreciative inquiry is looking at what is working And so it's about focusing on, let's take something in the business or in your life or your home that's really working, and then really looking at what makes that work so well, and then taking that learning and applying it to areas that maybe aren't working so well. So just about using all the things that do work to change the things that may not be going so well.
Fantastic.
In a nutshell.
Okay.
And it's so simple, and I think we tend to, it's a bit like a strengths-based approach where we should be looking at what people are good at, and then where possible, let's use those strengths and develop those strengths, rather than let's send them on training courses to develop the skills that actually they're maybe not motivated in those areas, or they're not good at it. There may be other people in your business that are good at that area. So let's just use all that positivity in the best way.
It's a really interesting concept that you're suggesting there. And there's a couple of things that pop up for me when you talk about it, Sarah. One of them is an experience I had when I mapped my team at Flagship, and out of the team, there was only one with a preference for director, of which wasn't me. And because director's quite low as a preference. Those listening, if you want to know more about motivational maps, by the way, I know a fantastic map practitioner. She's called Sarah, and she's on this call. But also, I do a bit as well. But obviously, Sarah is very experienced and does youth maps as well, don't you, Sarah? Yeah. But one of the things I did with my team when I did the map was the director profile, which for listeners who are a little bit uncertain of motivational maps, the director profile is people who like to be in control of resource. They like to sort of manage things. They're good managers, I suppose, is the right way of putting things. And interestingly, I had someone who didn't have any managerial responsibility. So the first thing I've done is actually given them some managerial responsibility, and they've been like a duck to water, which I find fascinating and really, really good. And then the other thing that I thought was thinking about is it's a bit like the NLP strategy that we talked about, which is modeling. So it's where you look at the great things of somebody else that's doing awesome stuff, and then you get inside their, to be able to develop your own skill set. You get inside that sort of mindset to be able to then nurture that in yourself as well, which I think is a really useful skill. But I understand what you're saying, which is a lot of companies will go, right, I know the answer, this person's bad at this, so let's get them some training, when actually what you're saying is going, let's focus on everyone's strengths, and finding the people. If your business needs a bit of something, find the people who are good at it and get them doing that thing that's good.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome, cool. I'm glad I understood that. Okay, Sarah. Awesome, I love it. So we're talking a bit more as well about positive psychology and this thing called PERMA. So tell me a bit more about PERMA, and is that like a bit like a PERMA that I haven't got on my head or not?
So PERMA came about through the work of the most awesome psychologist, who's really recognised as the founder of positive psychology, a guy called Martin Seligman. And if anyone wants to know any more, he's got some brilliant books. But I couldn't believe this, Pete, but until about 20 years ago, the only research that psychologists had done was what happened when people's mental health went downhill. And what Martin Seligman did, and I suppose just thinking about it now, it is using that appreciative enquiry and modelling. He turned it all on his head and said, okay, but what do we need to maintain a positive mindset and a positive mental health? And there's some amazing research, but his work, a lot of it centers around this word PERMA, and it's an acronym for positive emotion, and I'll come back to these. Engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment.
Awesome. So I'm just making a note of them myself.
So
cool.
positive emotions is focusing on what's going well. And I don't know whether you've ever used a gratitude diary, Pete.
I definitely have, by the way. I definitely have. I don't just do gratitude. I do 5 things a day. I do my 5 Fs. Have I told you about my 5 Fs, Sarah?
No.
So my 5 Fs. What am I feeling? Yeah, in my journal. So I write what I'm feeling. I write about what I'm fearing.
Ooh.
Because there's always some secrets inside what you're fearing. I also do what am I thinking? Fearing, feeling, my future. So I do a visualization and rewrite down what my future looks like. I also do what I need to forgive. So anything that's happened that's maybe upset me or made me angry, I'll talk about who I need to forgive to be able to let go of that. And then the final one is what am I thankful for, which is my final F.
I love that. So
sorry, carry on.
That's brilliant. So that really takes the 3 good things but builds on that. But the research behind writing down 3 things that we're grateful for is sometimes if people are really having a bad time, finding 3 good things can be really difficult for people. But it could be seeing the sunshine on a really cloudy day. It could just be seeing the first snowdrop if it's that time of year. Or it could be really big things. But if we write down those 3 good things every day, the research shows that if we've done that for a 30-day period, the benefits of that last for 3 months. Because every time we write something down, so when we experience something good, we get a hit of dopamine and serotonin, the hormones that are really, really important for our mental health. And the theory behind writing them down is that when we write them down, because our brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality, we're getting those hits of those feel-good hormones again. And you can do it on an app on your phone. I love doing it in a really special notebook, because the idea for me is that whenever I pick my notebook up, I don't just go in and write it down. I look at what I've written before. So you're also getting those additional hits. So it's a really good thing, and it's a good thing you can do around the dinner table. I know families that every day they'll write the good things down and put them in a jar with a post-it note, and then on a Sunday or whatever day works for them, they'll sit round as a family and read them all out. And actually, it's a fantastic way of developing that positivity.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's really good. I might have to try that with the family.
Yeah, I think it's lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. Love that. Fantastic. So tell me a bit more about engagement then, Sarah.
So I will. The only other thing I would say on the positive emotion is smile at yourself in the mirror. If you're feeling down, just go and give yourself a smile, because actually that also gives us hits of serotonin and dopamine.
Well, I'd obviously I'd always try and smile at people, but I've never looked at myself and smiled in the mirror.
It really
I'm going to take some Sarah advice and go and give it a go.
Fantastic. And actually, also just thinking about writing down the good things. Start every team meeting with what's gone well. Just a really quick round the room. Give me what's gone well since the last team meeting.
I like that.
And I do it in training programs that I'm running, and it just lifts that. You can feel the energy in the room lift.
I love that. I love that a lot. That's really cool. Good. Awesome. No, I love that. Absolutely love that. That's I'm definitely going to use that. Definitely going to use
Brilliant.
that. Tell me more about engagement. Yeah. Tell me more about engagement. If you're ready to move on from positive emotion, by the way, are you ready? Let's go. Let's go engagement then.
Engagement is what we're doing now. It's talking to people. And I think with the pandemic, we got so used to seeing people on Zoom, but actually you cannot beat being face to face. So whether it's walking down the street to work, just saying hello, I always think you never know what's going on for anybody else that you are walking past. And you don't know whether you might be the only person that other person engages with that day. So I always say hello to anybody that I walk past, if I'm out in the park on my bike or anything. I think lots of people see me with my disability and think, they make the assumption that actually because my body doesn't work, my brain doesn't work, and I'm this mad grey woman on a bike just saying hello to everybody, but actually that's not the case. I'm doing it because I want to make a difference.
I don't know what to say to that, Sarah. But I just love the thought of you out. I just love the thought of you out, smiling and saying hello to people and spreading some joy in the world. I think that's amazing. Yeah. And that's on your, what's it called? It's your Zoomy, isn't it? Is it called Zoomy?
No, that's you're talking about my amazing Omeo.
Yes, Omeo, yeah.
Segway with a seat on it, but I'm talking about my tricycle.
Oh, really? So you've got a trike as well that you get out on? That's amazing. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, cool. And you pedal the tricycle?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Good for
That's
keeping fit.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, I bet that must be quite hard work. I bet that's tiring, isn't it?
No, not really. I probably don't go very fast or very far, but it's lovely to get out.
Awesome. Excuse if you can hear the dog in the background. The dog's just had a little grumble at somebody, I think, walking past. Can you hear it? Can you hear the dog?
Yeah.
Is the mic picking it up? I am sorry.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do then is I'm going to quickly hand back to you with relationships and mute myself. Tell me a bit more about relationships there.
Okay. So relationships is building those really important networks, whether it's a relationship if we are at work or if we're at home, even if it's with the person in the shop where you buy your milk from. It's just so important to spend time building those relationships. And that's why there's a real link with loneliness. It's one of the biggest killers in the world. And this is why looking at positive psychology, building those relationships is so important.
Sorry about that. I had to unmute myself. Typically, someone started mowing the bloody lawn as well. So my dog's going nuts. Bear with me 1 second. I'm hoping the door's soundproof. There you go. Is that a bit better?
Yes.
The only thing is, right, is you might have to send help in a bit because it's very hot and I've just had to shut the door. So I've no ventilation, all right? So if I start to go like that, just send help, all right? Cool. Yeah, no, I think I can really resonate with the relationships element because I see, I guess as time goes on, you become sort of more and more. I think loneliness is a big issue, particularly for men. I don't know. Obviously, I can't speak on behalf of women, but I know from a men point of view, I look at some of my friends, I look at my dad, and I think that, loneliness can be a bit of a challenge because for men in particular, we tend to have relationships just to sort of justify my statement there because it's quite a bold statement. But to justify that, what I find is, or my experience is that with men, we tend to have friendships that are based on the stuff we do. So, for example, if we go to the gym, we have friends at the gym. If we play football, we have friends that are with the football. We have friends, if we go and play golf, that are from golf, right? But they're linked to activity stuff. They're not just friends for the sake of being friends. So we don't tend to just go to each other's house or go for a walk or something like that. It normally tends to be doing something. And I think the challenge is because the two things are so linked, sometimes, particularly as we get older, we don't do those things anymore. For example, I don't play football anymore. So therefore, I don't socialise with my football friends anymore. And the relationships kind of go hand in hand. So I think it's something I guess my health check on that is that certainly something for men to reflect on. I don't know if it's the same for women or not, but it can be quite tricky, right?
I think you're right. And actually, it takes a lot of hard work, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think interestingly, so I met up again last couple of weeks ago with some friends that I've spent less time with. And I think the challenge for me with that is because I've set the business up and spent so much time on the business. And then with a family as well, it can be really hard to then find the time for relationships that are outside of the family because you've got your other responsibilities. But I hooked up again with them. We said, do you know what? We should just meet up monthly and let's just make it really easy. It'll be like fixed. So it's like the first Thursday of the month. And we're not going to try and do anything like crazy. Let's just go and find some food somewhere. And it's just first Thursday every month, 7:00, done. And it just goes in the diary and it's easy because as soon as you start trying to shuffle it around, And I think that's always the challenge, is you meet up with people and you don't set the next date. It's a little bit like the lack of accountability. If you don't set what's the next thing, it's a bit like a coaching session, isn't it? Then nothing happens, nothing changes.
Yeah. And I think that's awesome that you've got that date, that regular date in the diary, because I think you're right. It is in general a much bigger issue for men than women, and we know that suicide rates are a lot higher, don't we?
And that's absolutely true. Yeah, middle-aged men. So obviously, I don't know how the statistics link to loneliness, but I would expect that loneliness and depression are heavily linked, and depression and suicide are heavily linked as well. Yeah. So there is a challenge, isn't there?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So motivation specialist, tell me a bit more about motivation.
So it's meaning.
Oh, no. Because I've been looking at motivation on your thing. I've actually got it written there, meaning. I don't really know what I've done wrong here. But the two things are linked, right?
I was just going to say, I really do think if we find something so the meaning comes from when we're in flow. So when we get totally lost in what we're doing. So I don't know what you get lost in, Pete. So for me, it's if I'm cooking, or I've recently rediscovered being creative and doing arty things, or actually my biggest one, which I used to do a lot more than I do now, which is a good learning point for me to take away from it, is getting lost in a book. How lovely is that? But actually, when we're really focused on something that's really important for us, then that's meaning. But actually, that does link to motivation, and accomplishment links to motivation as well. Because if we're motivated to do something, we achieve it a lot quicker, and we are in flow, which is why the motivation side of my work fits so well with this positive psychology PERMA and the appreciative enquiry.
Absolutely, yeah. No, that makes total sense. I think I was just listening to you, and that resonates with me. I love getting lost in a book, but it makes me realise that actually my work is quite good, because I was thinking about where I tend to just lose time, and I feel like I never have enough time. And I think because I'm always quite engaged and motivated by what I'm doing. It must be motivational. It must have some meaning for me to be happy. I got up this morning at, I think it was 4:30 to go and work. Something's driving me, right?
Hi, it's Pete from Flagship Partners. We're proud to sponsor a Half Dozen Things podcast. Flagship Partners help their clients become safer, greener, and greater through a range of consultancy and training services. We offer audits through to risk assessments, contracts through to support with managing your culture, all the way from mandatory training through to management training as well. So if you need any support, please do get in touch with Flagship Partners today.
You are bonkers. But everyone that knows you bonkers, don't they? Or have I just let that secret out the bag?
Do you think people know that I'm bonkers?
I don't know.
I don't know either. It's very hard. It's not really any of my business what people think of me.
Maybe that's just my model of the world.
Oh, do you know what? That'll be interesting for listeners to comment. The listeners think that Pete's bonkers. As Pete lost his marbles. I must be. I'm talking about myself in the third person.
But do you know what? I love that you get lost in your work, and I'm a bit the same. And I think So part of my work is career coaching, and I think it's so, we've only got, is it something like, I was going to research this before we jumped on and I forgot, but it's something like 17,500 days. That might be wrong. You might give me the answer, but how many days on average a person lives?
Right, yeah, it's 40,000 weeks.
Thank you.
Which is whatever 40,000 is times 7. Oh, 4,000 weeks even. Sorry, 4,000. So 28,000 weeks. No, 28,000 days.
Right, yeah. So that, and when you think you and I, well, I'm certainly probably more than halfway through my life, you might not be quite, but actually that means that we've not got that many days to really, really make the most of life. So why spend it in a job that we don't enjoy?
That's so true. That is so true. 4,000 weeks. Yeah, I read that last year, to be fair. Great book, and my maths has just gone totally awry. But yeah, 28,000 days, it's 77 years. Just short of 77 years, which I guess is the average mortality rate.
Yeah.
So, do you know what? That's really resonated with me, just thinking about that. That's interesting. Really interesting. That's just like flicked a little light bulb in my head.
So actually it's about making every day count, isn't it?
It is, yeah, absolutely. It is about making every day count. Did I show you my tattoo when we were on our course?
Yes.
Which says Carpe Diem, which is Latin for seize the day. It's very true, isn't it? Very true. Yeah. I can hear the birds singing in your back garden.
That's because I've got my doors open because there isn't a dog barking outside.
No, exactly. And do you know what? The temperature's risen a couple of degrees in here already, so I might just have to go and noise check it. I accidentally pressed my ear pod a minute ago. Did you hear some music, or was it just in my ear? So it just started playing some music in my ear. I was like, "Oh, what's that?" And then I was like, oh, "Stop, tap again." So whoever invented these bloody things is a nightmare. Right, cool. Have we done PERMA, Sarah? Are you happy?
We have. Yeah.
We've done PERMA. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So my next thing for us to talk about, I had sleep neuroscience and goals to come on.
Yeah.
So tell me about, should we go with sleep, as we were talking about me getting up at 4:30 in the morning?
So I don't know whether you've read the book Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker.
What an amazing book that is. Highly recommend that. I highly recommend that. So even though I got up at 4:30, I did still have nearly 7 hours of sleep, which is good, isn't it?
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's vital though, isn't it? Really important. 7 hours is like the barest minimum, they say in the book, isn't it?
Yeah. And when we're thinking, because as you mentioned, I work with children and families as well. And there's been studies that show the difference in the impact of kids that are taking exams, because it's that time of year, isn't it? Difference in performance between those kids that have had a really good night's sleep and the ones that haven't is absolutely phenomenal. And sleep, basically, I suppose I haven't really thought of it like this, but I always see motivation as the energy that we put in a car, and a car won't run when the fuel tank's empty. But sleep is the same. If we don't have a full tank of sleep, then we're not, or if we have the wrong type of sleep, then we won't get to wherever we want to go as efficiently and as effectively as possible.
I think you're absolutely right. It's very true that you say that. So people will notice that I'm wearing my Aura ring, and what that does is that measures my sleep, and then it gives me a readiness score for the day, which is kind of like the fuel tank concept you're talking about. It tells me, today I think it's 80%, 80%.
Wow.
So I've only got 80% fuel for the journey today.
I'd rather have 80%. That's pretty good, isn't it?
It's not a bad tank of fuel, I have to say, Sarah, I must say. And then I keep it topped up with motivation.
Yeah, and actually it's funny, isn't it? Because people talk about perfectionism. And I don't know about you, Pete, but when I'm looking at people's motivational maps, if people are 70% motivated, then actually that's awesome. And someone looking at their map might be going, but that's only 70%. Well, actually, we don't want to be running on all cylinders all of the time, do we? Because actually, if you keep your foot down coming back to the car, if you keep your foot down and go flat out all of the time, your performance will be really badly affected.
Which is also very true. That is very true indeed. It's interesting, isn't it, how I think sleep makes a massive difference. I really do. I think before I read the Why We Sleep book, and the difference that it made was that before I thought 6 hours was okay. It's interesting just to put a number on it, I suppose, for people. But there'll be a lot of people listening who probably only get 5 or 6 hours sleep, maybe even less, some people. Because I believe it's quite common, right? It's quite common. I believe, everyone targets 8 hours, or they talk about 8 hours. I think 8 hours is probably a challenge for a lot of people. But 7 hours is, scientifically, they're saying 7 hours is really the target, isn't it?
And you're right, we all need different levels. I think because of my physical challenges, I know I need 8 or 9, actually, but that's because according to a physiotherapist, I'm doing the equivalent of running a marathon every day.
Mm-hmm. That's and interestingly, that was similar to what Lolly's physio said about her cerebral palsy. So my daughter Lolly, for those listening that don't know, she's got cerebral palsy hemiplegia, and they reckon that she'd burn calories or burn energy twice as quickly as her peers doing the same activity. Which is interesting, isn't it? I don't know how science-based that is, but that's what the physio reckoned.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, isn't it, right? So you will at least burn double what I do if we were to do the same thing.
Allegedly.
Which is true. I suppose none of us really know, but I suppose there's probably a difference between me and my son, I suppose, in how much energy he burns doing the same stuff. Probably not as much as me. I guess that probably is affected with age as well, I suppose. Yeah. But do you get 8 or 9 hours, do you, Sarah, comfortably?
I should do. I see a definite difference if I don't.
Do you? Right. Do you? Okay, cool. Yeah, well, it's a tricky thing, and I suppose, do you like sort of go, right, I'm committing to 8 or 9 hours, and then you just wake up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. It's one of those things, isn't it? I suppose when you wake up, try and go back to sleep, I suppose, if you can. But if you're awake, you're awake. It's hard to then try and fight it, isn't it, if you're awake?
That's it. And I've always slept really well, but actually I'm at that menopause age, and just being wide awake. And oh God, it's horrendous.
Oh, really?
But you do get a lot more done in the short term.
Well, that's definitely positive energy there, Sarah. So well done. Live, walking the talk there, walking the talk. So tell me a bit about neuroscience and goals were the two other things that we wanted to sort of cover. So were those two linked? Were those two linked or not linked?
I think they are, because I think our brains, it's about understanding how our brains work, which is a lot of the positive psychology and the sleep, but actually looking at just thinking about, okay, are we focusing on the right things? And we know that, so with the goals, you and I know that if we're going, and I do keep coming back to cars today, if we get in a car but we don't know where we're going, actually we won't get anywhere really, will we? We could just end up going round in circles. So actually having a goal of where we want to go to is so important. And that is really important, not just for the end of today, but actually let's look at that really long-term goal, and then let's work back from that and see actually what action do we need to take today that is going to take us one more step towards that long-term goal.
That's really interesting. That is really interesting. And it's quite hard. I think one of the things, I suppose, is it's quite hard to know what the right goal is as well, isn't it? That's its own challenge.
Yeah. And that's where I think with our master practitioner NLP, it was really fascinating for me to learn with you how we can help clients to get clarity on those long-term goals. And I always see it as, so we have a goal, and I was once talking to a friend who said, Sarah, you just sort of managed to get your point across and get to where you want to go, but you don't always go. She was very focused and could actually end up upsetting quite a few people because she was so focused on this destination, and it may be just something she needed to achieve that day or that week. Whereas I think sometimes it's about having that goal, but being able to see that there's not only one route to getting there, and you may actually have to go sort of, so if you're at Land's End and you need to go to John O'Groats, okay, there's the most direct route, but sometimes you might have to go via London and Norwich to get there. Sometimes you might have to go another way, But actually, if you keep the end goal in mind, then the journey can become so interesting, and it can take us down all sorts of different routes as well.
Absolutely. And I think, do you know what? I've really enjoyed listening to you saying that, because I was visualizing it in my head as as you were talking. And one of the things I think I've reflected on from our NLP experience and doing the master practitioner is, and personally, and also the coaching that I've had as well, is understanding that I used to be very future focused. I used to be really focused on the goal, and I used to find that very motivating, and I still do find a goal motivating, but it's become much more important to me to actually stop and enjoy the journey along the way. And I think people who are very, there's lots of future focused people out there who've got this destination mindset. And one of the challenges I think that a lot of modern society has is that modern sales and marketing strategies and social media sell everyone this sort of end goal, don't they, of like utopia in the future that is so hard to achieve. Many people will work for years and years and years to achieve retirement of this golden, thing that may or may not ever end up happening for them. And actually, they're so important not to forget, and to make sure you focus on actually day to day. Am I enjoying the things I'm doing? Are they rewarding? Am I rewarding myself? Am I finding it fulfilling? Am I finding meaning and purpose? And all the things that I find motivational now, because actually now's all I've got. Because actually this end goal may never occur. It's great if it does, but actually, am I enjoying the process and the person I am whilst I'm on that journey? I think, and that's something that I've spent a lot more time focusing on.
And it's the journey that it makes up our happiness, doesn't it? You don't get somewhere and then be happy. So the journey needs to be a happy experience.
And you got hit the nail on the head with that, Sarah, because I always thought happiness was somewhere there. Well, it is literally there if we were talking timeline therapy, right? In the future somewhere. Obviously, we know some people it might be like that. If you're not watching on the camera, you'd struggle to understand what I'm talking about. But so, the future happiness is sort of somewhere there, but actually it's not, is it? It's not. Happiness isn't the millionaire lifestyle or the mansion or the, all of that sort of stuff that a lot of people will aim for, or the supercar, or, whatever it may be. Having the six pack, or being able to bench press 150 kilos, or whatever it may be, winning the Olympics. It's about the happiness is in the now. It's in the chatting to Sarah on a podcast on a Monday morning. That's where the happiness is, Sarah.
And it's those connections and those people that we meet along the way, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Really, really important. Really, really important. So you said to me at the beginning of the podcast, life is short and we need to focus on what's good. And that doesn't just mean the future, does it? It means the here and now too, right?
Yeah, completely.
Awesome. There was something you said a little bit earlier, Sarah, that I picked on as well. And I wanted to just understand that in a work context. And then we're going to have a bit of a quick NLP chat. So people don't go to work to do a bad job. That was something that really stood out to me. And that's something which I think will resonate a lot with the people listening, who are often, compliance-based safety roles, that kind of stuff. So there is this blame thing often in workplaces around blame, and that people have come to work and they're crap and whatever it may be. Tell me a bit more about your thought process around that people don't go to work to do a bad job.
So, have you ever deliberately gone to work and thought you're not going to do a good job today?
Do you know what? I've never done that, Sarah, no.
I haven't either. Why would anybody go to work to do that? So there's always a reason why something has happened. It may be related to work, it may be related to training, it may be something else in someone's life that's been going on that you have no idea about. And it's about communication and trust, isn't it? If you can sit down and have conversations and make sure that if something is going on in your employees' lives, okay, we all have a right to privacy, and there's an awful lot of things that I wouldn't want to have told my employer when I was at work. That's fine, but actually you should have an environment of trust so that if somebody is going through something, you can have that conversation. And in your world of compliance and safety, that is so much more important than, I would say, probably in a lot of other jobs. Because if you can't either talk about issues so that they don't end up as big issues, or say, actually, I've done something wrong here, and then have a conversation about what went wrong and how it happened so we could avoid it again. It's implicit in, if you're an organisation that is aiming to be up here, then actually you're not going to get there. I suppose it comes back to as I said, I used to work in HR. Humans are not resources. People are your biggest asset. You've got to really build those relationships and trust. And actually, trust is two-way, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes, Sarah. Thank you very much for that as well. I really appreciate it. Final question from me, Sarah. Final question. Tell me how your life has changed off the back of doing your NLP Master Practitioner.
Oh, I think the biggest one for me is I have always loved coaching, but I've never believed that I am a good coach, and I believe that I am now.
Wow. And how's that helped you in the past 3-4 months since we did our course?
It's about developing the focus of my business and knowing that I can grow my business as a coach and let go of the other work that I've been doing.
Awesome, fantastic. I love that, Sarah. And finally, the final thing then is to tell the listeners where they can find you, and if they're interested, what services you can offer.
Thank you. So the best place to find me is on LinkedIn, and that has got connection to my website, which is Plain Sailing Motivation, which has got far too much on it and it's being rehauled as we go forward. And just find me on Twitter, and I'll share a link if that's all right, Pete.
No worries at all, Sarah. So send that link over, and I'll put that on. I'll put it onto the podcast show notes for us as well, Sarah. I can vouch for Sarah because, like I say, she was my breakthrough partner in my NLP training. She's a very good coach indeed. So do get in touch and connect with Sarah on LinkedIn. She's got some fascinating insights to share. Thank you very much for joining me, Sarah, and taking your time out. And thank you very much for those listening. I hope you've really enjoyed it and got some insights from Sarah's what Sarah shared about positivity and positive energy and all of the good things that we've been speaking about, as well as PERMA too. And I hope to see you on the next podcast. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining me, Sarah. See you soon.
Thanks, Pete.
I really hope you loved today's episode, and if you did, please make sure you subscribe and listen out for future episodes too. Please do share it across your social media channels. We hope to reach more and help more people. If you want to find out more about me, my name's Pete Rushmer. You'll find me across any social media channel and my business, Flagship Partners, and we're your partners in success across your business. Thank you. See you again soon.